Do you think the economy is fair? One of us is rich while the other is quite poor. The gap has widened significantly. All of this has brought up the phrase, the world is not fair. That is why most people agree that we need to improve our economy. However, at the same time, Karl Marx's ideas, who criticized capitalism, are quite important. In our video, we will talk about these ideas and his political theory. First of all, his political and economic ideas were used to create disastrously planned economies and bad dictatorships. However, we should not dismiss Marx too quickly. We should see him as a guide who diagnoses the problems of capitalism and guides us towards a more promising future. Capitalism will have to be reformed, and Marx's analyses will be a part of any answer. Marx was born in 1818 in Trier, Germany. Soon he joined the Communist Party, a small group of intellectuals who fought for the overthrow of the class system, and the abolition of private property. He worked as a journalist and had to flee Germany, eventually settling in London. Marx, sometimes together with his friend Friedrich Engels, wrote numerous books and articles. Mostly, Marx wrote about capitalism, which dominated the Western world. Capitalism was still developing during his time, and Marx was one of its most intelligent and sharpest critics. Some of the problems he identified during that period were as follows: modern work has become alienated. One of Marx's greatest insights was that work could be one of the greatest sources of joy. However, to be satisfied in work, Marx wrote that workers need to see themselves in the objects they have created. Think of the person who made this chair. It is simple, strong, honest, and elegant. This is an example of how, at its best, labor offers us a chance to externalize the good within us. But this is becoming increasingly rare in the modern world. Part of the problem is that modern work is highly specialized. Specialized jobs make the modern economy extremely efficient, but at the same time, it rarely allows any worker to truly feel the contribution they are making to humanity's real needs. Marx argued that modern work leads to alienation. In other words, there is a disconnect between what you do all day and who you feel you really are and what you think you ideally should be contributing to existence. Modern work is unreliable. Capitalism makes the human being entirely dispensable, just one factor among others that can be ruthlessly let go when costs rise or technological savings can be made. And yet, as Marx knew, deep down, we don't want to be arbitrarily let go, we are afraid of being abandoned. Communism is not just an economic theory. Understood emotionally, it expresses a deep-seated longing that we will always have a place in the world, that we will not be cast out. Workers earn less and become poor while others profit from them. This is perhaps Marx's most obvious critique of capitalism. In particular, he believed that capitalists reduced workers' wages as much as possible to achieve a wide profit margin. He called this primitive accumulation. While capitalists saw profit as a reward for skill and technological talent, Marx offered a much harsher evaluation. Profit is simply theft, and what you are stealing is the talent and hard work of your workforce. However much we dress up the fundamentals, Marx insists that, at its crudest, capitalism means paying a worker one price for doing something that can be sold for another, much higher one. Profit is a fancy term for exploitation. Capitalism is very unstable. Marx proposed that capitalist systems are characterized by a series of crises. Every crisis is presented by capitalists as somehow unusual and rare, soon to be the last one. But on the contrary, Marx argued that crises are endemic to capitalism and stem from something quite odd. It is the fact that we can produce far more than we need. Capitalist crises are crises of abundance, rather than crises of scarcity. Our factories and systems are so efficient that we could provide everyone on this planet with a car, a house, access to a good school, and a hospital. This both enraged and made Marx hopeful. Most of us don't need to work because the modern economy is so productive. But instead of seeing this need not to work as the freedom it is, we complain masochistically and describe it with the pejorative word unemployment. We should call it freedom. The reason there is so much unemployment is a deep and admirable one, because we are so good at making things efficiently. We all don't need to work in the coal mines. But in that case, Marx thought we should make leisure admirable. We should redistribute the wealth of the massive corporations that make so much surplus money and give it to everyone. This, in its own way, is as beautiful a dream as Jesus' promise of heaven, but it sounds a good deal more realistic. Capitalism is bad for capitalists. Marx did not think capitalists were evil. For example, he was acutely aware of the sorrows and hidden agonies behind bourgeois marriage. Marx argued that marriage was actually an extension of business and that the bourgeois family was fraught with tension, oppression, and resentment, with people staying together not for love but for financial reasons. Marx believed that the capitalist system forces everyone to put economic interests at the heart of their lives, making it impossible to know deep, honest relationships. He called this psychological tendency commodity fetishism, because it makes us value things that have no objective value. Marx wanted people to be freed from financial constraints so that they could finally begin to make sensible, healthy choices. The 20th century feminist answer to the oppression of women has been to argue that women should be able to go out to work. Marx's answer was more subtle. This feminist insistence merely perpetuates human slavery. The point isn't that women should imitate the sufferings of their male colleagues, it's that men and women should have the permanent option to enjoy leisure. Why don't we all think a bit more like Marx? An important aspect of Marx's work is that he proposes that there is an insidious, subtle way in which the economic system colors the sort of ideas that we end up having. The economy generates what Marx termed an ideology. A capitalist society is one where most people, rich and poor, believe all sorts of things that are really just value judgments related to the economic system, that a person who doesn't work is worthless, that leisure, beyond a few weeks a year, is sinful, that more belongings will make us happier, and that worthwhile things, and people, will invariably make money. In short, one of the biggest evils of capitalism is not that there are corrupt people at the top, this is true in any human hierarchy, but that capitalist ideas teach all of us to be anxious, competitive, conformist, and politically complacent. Marx didn't just outline what was wrong with capitalism, he also gave us glimpses of what he wanted the ideal utopian future to be like. In his Communist Manifesto, he describes a world without private property or inherited wealth, with centralized control of banking, communication, and transportation industries, and free public education. Marx also expected that communist society would allow people to develop lots of different sides of their natures. In communist society, it is possible for me to do one thing today and another tomorrow, to hunt in the morning, fish in the afternoon, rear cattle in the evening, criticize after dinner, just as I have a mind, without ever becoming hunter, fisherman, herdsman, or critic. After Marx moved to London, he was supported by his friend and intellectual partner Friedrich Engels. Engels, a wealthy man whose father owned a cotton plant in Manchester, paid Marx's debts and made sure his works were published. Capitalism paid for communism. The two men even wrote each other adoring poetry. Marx was not a well-regarded or popular intellectual in his day. Respectable, conventional people of Marx's time would have laughed at the idea that his ideas could remake the world. Yet just a few decades later, they did. His writings became the keystone for some of the most important ideological movements of the 20th century. But Marx was like a brilliant doctor in the early days of medicine. He could recognize the nature of the disease, although he had no idea how to go about curing it. At this point in history, we should all be Marxists in the sense of agreeing with his diagnosis of our troubles. But we need to go out and find the cures that will really work. As Marx himself declared, and we deeply agree, philosophers have interpreted the world in various ways. The point, however, is to change it. If you liked my video, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and share.